Other thing really quickly I want to hit on, then we'll open it up to questions. Again, that was a great program, very proud of that and those efforts. Entertainment and Sports Complex, tonight, it'll be before City Council. I think what we've done the first quarter, which is basically concluded, which means the task force, which should be commended, came up with 7 proposals. They made a recommendation. The convergence plan is a recommendation that they supported, basically a land swap at the rail yard site connected to intermodal. Council tonight will get a chance to either accept the task force recommendation or make some sort of modification to that. But the ultimate goal is that we take the next 3 to 4 weeks and work on an exclusive right to negotiate with the convergence proposal folks, and then we would be entering into the feasibility phase, which would probably be 3, 4, 5, and most likely 6 months, so about 18 months. And that'll be where we're kicking the tires and putting milestones and measuring every single challenge and determining if this project is feasible. So that would be the second quarter. So that's where we're at on that. Any questions?
Yes, maybe you've had 4 days to look at the recommendation of the task force. What are your thoughts?
I was very pleased. I thought that they were very thorough in terms of their analysis. I thought they were very pragmatic, meaning there were 7 proposals. They felt that 3 proposals rose above the other 4. And within those 3 proposals, they felt the one that had the funding, had the backing from the NBA and the Blues was on board actually made the most sense at this time. What I do like in terms of the recommendation, that if that one doesn't work out, these 2 are worthy to be considered. And I think that's very important. So we're going to put maybe not all of our eggs in one basket, but we're going to put most of our eggs in one basket, pursue that, hopefully to an ending that's very successful for all of us. If for some reason key deliverables are not being met over the 180 days, then we have 2 other proposals that are worthy to be considered.
I mean, what are some of the key questions that need to be answered by the convergence group?
Well, I think, for one, it's a very complicated project, meaning there's 3 different parcels of land that are connected. So what we would have to do, and I'm not even say about the convergence group, for me first, is the city is going to have to ask tough questions. What is our role in this? What participation, at what level are we going to be participating in as a city? We have said clearly that the taxpayers have to come first, but we do realize there'll be some sort of public involvement, and over 6 months we'll have to determine what that is. Is our land going to be a part of it? Are we going to create a TIF? Are there other things that we need to consider, like a tax abatement? If you look at Cal Expo, where the convergence group would have to really look at is for Cal Expo to sell, they're going to have to get a fair market value. They're going to have to get legislative sign-off at the state level from the governor's office, as well as Senator Steinberg and all the folks in the legislature. They're going to have to determine, is it feasible for Cal Expo fair to be moved to Natomas? And then from the Natomas standpoint, they're going to have to determine what makes sense for them and what kind of economic benefits will they be able to be the recipients of. I think a key question for the convergence group would be, for me, is to show in 180 days how you're going to be able to pull off all 3 of those, because each of them are going to have their own set of questions and agreements with that particular development team. And what is the sequence of each of those? So again, if the entertainment sports complex happens at the rail yard in 2014, then what is the sequence of what would transpire at Cal Expo and Natomas? Again, back to the city, I want to know how that loan is going to be paid off or going to continue to be served. That's a $60 million loan. That's going to be very important. So I think there's a lot of kind of mid-level questions. There's a lot of technical questions that our assistant city manager, Dangberg, will talk about today. And then I think you're eventually going to get to some higher level questions, and there'll be these sorts of things. Who's going to own the building? Who's going to operate the building? Who's going to manage and maintain the building? That's going to be a very key set of questions that we're going to have to get at a little bit later as well.
At this point, though, would you support having city staff at least draft that exclusive negotiating agreement?
Yeah, let me be clear on that. I am very supportive of the task force recommendation. I am very supportive of directing city staff to draft the exclusive right to negotiate agreement, which is choosing the convergence plan. And then I am very supportive of taking that 180 days and asking all the tough questions to determine whether or not this is feasible. For us as a city, for the state, does it make good sense for the taxpayer in the state of California, and so forth. So very supportive of where we are today.
Do you have any new information about Gus Vina becoming interim city manager? I thought that today there was going to be a session to finalize his contract. Any updates there on how long he'll serve? I know it was like between 9 and 12 months. And
yeah, those, again, good question. Thanks for following up.
okay.
Those are the questions that we're going to address tonight in closed session. Coming out of closed session, I believe we'll have a length of period that he'll serve. We'll agree on what his salary is or is going to be, and there'll be some sort of appointment letter or something like that in place. Again, so those specifics I'll be able to tell you after closed session, assuming that we get to an agreement.
He told me he wants to apply for the permanent city manager position. Can he do that? And do you have any information on if that's going to be open to external as well as internal candidates?
Yeah, so I'm speaking on behalf of the mayor, and I think on behalf of council as it relates to this. We made it very clear to all the assistant city managers that if they were to apply for this position and be chosen as an interim city manager, that there was nothing to preclude them from applying for the permanent. And the flip side of that is, A, we would like them to apply for the permanent, or in this case, Gus Vina, to apply for the permanent city manager position. And we would probably do a search, internal and external, that would start as early as the beginning of next year. If Gus Vina applied for the permanent position and got selected, then that would be great because it's somebody internal who got the job. If we ended up going a direction where we brought an external person in, then Gus should be able to return to his assistant city manager position if that was something that he was interested in doing.
Thank you.
Dave, last question.
My question comes from Dan Walters, who yesterday in his column asked, you mentioned the deal is complicated, it depends in part on selling the land at Cal Expo. Dan Walters asked, why should California pay for a Sacramento arena? How would you answer that question?
I think it's a fair question. I think that's what, assuming we can get an exclusive right to negotiate, that onus is really going to be on the developer to answer a lot of those questions, as well as California. So I think the question is fair. We would take 180 days and look at the feasibility, and Cal Expo and the state would have to say, does this make sense for the state of California? I can't answer that today. That's what the 180 days are for. Does this make sense for the state? Are we getting and selling our land at fair market value? And are we getting a price that we feel good about? Ultimately, does this project pencil? Does it allow us, and this is where I think there's a lot of upside, I think we all know that the state fair can be modernized. We want world-class state fair. That's not what we currently have at Cal Expo. So to look at something or consider something, moving to the Toma site that can modernize the state fair and make it a world-class destination, I think would be exciting for everyone. But 180 days are where a lot of these tough questions need to be asked.
So are you playing a neutral role at this point, or are you advocating for this plan with the state and other agencies?
I would think that I'm going to advocate for the plan very clearly. However, the stipulation for the city, first of all, we've got to make sure it makes sense for us, and that's what the 180 days are about. The state should do the same thing. They should do their due diligence to ultimately make sure it makes sense for them. That's what this 180-day period is about. So what I'm advocating is that we choose this plan and we evaluate it much closer over the next 180 days. All of us do our due diligence, and at the end of 180 days, if we all feel good about it, then we go forward in that direction. If it doesn't pencil out for the state, or doesn't make sense for the city, or the developer doesn't meet key milestones or benchmarks that are laid out in 180 days, then we'd have to look at a different course.
Thank you, folks.